There we go. Hey everyone. See here. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you're tuning in from. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for hopping on and hanging out today. Let me get myself a little situated. I have a bunch of things on my desk. Um, half done project. So had a busy weekend. One cool thing is a friend of mine. So right now, a lot of plants are indeed going to seed. A lot of springtime plants that are only around for a little bit. So they have definitely gone to seed, and a lot of those seed heads are now maturing. And so a really good friend of mine that I go birding with every week actually collected some seed pods for me since they were all being munched on by birds. And so she didn't want me to miss an opportunity. So she actually got me some seeds of a native columbine uh, that is found in Central Park. It's a red columbine. So she grabbed me a couple of the seed heads. So this is what the seed head looks like. And here are a bunch of seeds. There you go. So I'm gonna try to plant some in a little planter's box. Let's see, and probably some in my tree pit as well. We have two ashes in front of our building, two green ashes trees. So I want to see, hopefully, for next year to get some columbines in there. I really have to uh, touch up those tree pits. I actually have, I found these really cool knee pads. So for any of you that do gardening outside, there are these like knee pads that you can purchase in case you don't know about them. But you put them so if you're going to be on your knees, like digging, with your trowel, if you're planting bulbs, or weeding, and you're just going to have to be kind of in that kind of weird position, especially in crouching position for a while, you can get these. And so it just really helps. It really helps. I have seen some really cool gadgets though. There's this really interesting one that attaches to your leg. And so you can walk around, but then when you need to sit, it kind of creates a seat for you. I saw Epic Gardening was promoting it, and I was like, this is actually really neat. But but the knee ones are perfect for now. So I need to, yeah, the soil is very compacted. I have a license with the city, so I'm allowed to do things, work on city trees. I'm allowed to prune them back and things like that, and do stuff to their tree pits. Uh, Everyone technically here is able to plant things in the tree pit. So if you wanted to put petunias or something like that, we just advise that you don't put anything woody. So anything woody like roses, Rose of Sharon, certain types of mints, such as like rosemary, for instance, things that become woody are not advisable to put in tree pits because they outcompete the tree for moisture, whereas plants that stay, kind of more herbaceous, like basically stay green, they don't get woody. So especially small plants like petunias or things like that, those begonias even, those are great for tree pits because they actually lock in a lot of moisture, but not so much that they're not competing with the tree, thankfully. So yeah, I gotta give a whole little refresh to our tree pits here, and put some mulch down and stuff. Yeah, because thankfully we've had a lot of rain the last couple days. We've been having a heat wave here in New York. We had some thunderstorms. Friday was a pretty bad thunderstorm. We had some rain on Saturday, and then and then yesterday we had some intermittent storms, but they weren't too bad, thankfully. Oh, George, let me see here. Hi, Deanna, by the way. Hi. Um, Oh, 85 for you. Oh, we're actually having a pretty mild day today. It is 74. I'm very grateful for that because we were having, yesterday was pretty warm, but we've been having some pretty bad days. Yeah, George, there are indeed guidelines for tree pits. Yes. So these are the city trees, so they're city property. So there are indeed guidelines. The first 5 years of a tree that's planted in a tree pit are the most precarious. So a lot of our street trees, and this is not just New York, it's in other states as well. They usually come with a warranty. The warranty can be anywhere from like 2 to 3 years or so. And so you'll see sometimes brand new baby trees that, they're not like baby. They're good, at what, like 6, 7 feet tall. But you might see them with like a band, or it almost looks like it's like with a wire or something. There's like a tag on it. And so that usually has the warranty number. Did I freeze? I think I froze for a second. I'm on the 5G, so I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that. But yes, they will have a warranty kind of tag on them, and that tells you how long it's under warranty. So during that time, we shouldn't be cutting it. Don't mess with it because that will nullify the warranty. There's like no moving it, no pruning it, nothing. And if it has like stakes to kind of keep it upright, you don't move those. And once that warranty is over, then we can go ahead and do what we need to do to the tree, because it's just a very, uh, we don't want to mess with it, because if we were, let's say, to damage the tree, then the warranty is nullified, and they'll be like, the contractors or whoever they bought them from will be like, hey, well, we won't replace the tree for free. So, and each tree can cost anywhere from like $150, sometimes more. So folks are a little bit more careful about that. Here in New York City, we have a program called Trees NYC. So they're connected with NYC Parks. And so the Parks Department has a list, number one, of trees that we typically have in the city. We have about 16 different species that we tend to use. Not all of them are native, unfortunately, but you can request a tree. So here in New York City, if let's say you do not have a tree in front of your building and you would really like one, you can actually request one. You don't need any permission from your landlord or anything like that, because the sidewalk is city property. So you can say, I would really like a tree, and you can pick the species of the tree. If you do so, I truly encourage you to pick a native species if possible. I know a lot of people will pick things like ginkgos, or, even Chinese rain trees or things like that. But they unfortunately don't feed our native wildlife. So oaks are the best if you wanted to. They are a host for so many different types of caterpillar species, which are integral to our local birds as well as migratory birds. So especially if you have any like feeders in your yard or anything like that, and you really want to attract more bird species, oak would definitely be a great tree to plant. But you can request a tree. And so there's a wait list. So I think right now the wait list is about like 2 years long. So you might, put in the request now, but it won't be until like, 2 summers from now where your tree might finally be put in. But yeah, there are those guidelines. Is there a document to review online? I guess, yeah, there should be. I would say look for your local city's parks department site. Because usually, at least here in New York City, they are the ones that are in charge of the street tree maintenance. And so then there's this other organization that I work with called Trees NYC. And so they partnered with NYC Parks, in which they created a whole program called Citizen Pruners. And so that I'm not sure if it's available in every city, but what we do is essentially we get trained for several weeks. We undergo an exam. And we have to learn how to identify the trees, how to properly maintain trees, how to prune them. It's a really wonderful training. It was $100, and you get a license. You have to renew every few years, and then that grants you the powers, essentially, where now you can do a bunch of different things. You can take care of all the trees, let's say on your block, if you'd like to. You can also put in like requests for things for like mulch, and you can organize events as well with volunteers. So it really is a really cool way to connect with the community and take care of the street trees, because a lot of cities, even New York City, we have experienced crazy budget cuts to our parks department. They just got slammed even worse recently, and there's just not enough. We have thousands upon thousands of trees all around the city, and there's just no way for them to, yeah, they don't. We have to do, kind of do our part and help out. George, that's a great question. So George asks, how do they ensure different citizen pruners don't prune the same tree within a short time frame? Great. Well, we also are trained to, we don't just prune the tree to prune it. There are specific reasons why we would prune a tree. One, if there's a damaged branch. Two, there's an obstructive branch. So the branch is growing downward or kind of outward, where it's going to start to get hit by, let's say, cars that are parking. So it's like past the curb, essentially. Any branches as well that are kind of rubbing, kind of like become kind of like nooks, and are kind of elbowing and rubbing up against each other. So we want to do that. And so there's very specific. We don't just prune them back to prune them back. It's all very specific. Two, we're also trained to recognize recent pruning. So if we look at the tree and it looks perfectly shaped, and we see that there are some fresher cuts that have not completely healed, that alerts us that somebody had already worked on the tree, and so we don't mess with it. Anytime that you are like working with the tree, even if you're doing, like, let's say it had never been pruned and it's a mess, there are plenty of trees like that around here. And we have to really go in and remove a lot. Even during that time, like, we're not allowed to remove, I think, more than 15-20% at a time. And of course, you want to make sure that the temperature, if any of you are ever pruning your trees, make sure that the temperature is over 40 degrees Fahrenheit. You never want to prune trees when it's below freezing. This inhibits their growth. So you want to, when it's a pretty consistent kind of 40 and up, you want to make sure that you're kind of pruning back then, because that ensures that at least it's warm enough where the tree can start its healing process. We're also trained to recognize the branch collar as well, so that when we prune, we cut in the appropriate place, so that it allows the branch collar to actually come and kind of close that wound like a scab. We are also taught to fix messed up pruning. So sometimes some folks will prune and they won't do it appropriately. Sometimes they're not the ones that have the licenses. They're just local people. And they thought, oh, I'm just helping because this branch keeps getting hit or something like that by the cars. And then they end up doing it incorrectly, which can cause harm to the tree. So so it's a lot of training, not only in the classroom, but we're also out in the field being trained. And then we have the big exam at the end. And then there's constant revolving door of events that we are encouraged to go to. So they'll do them in the different boroughs, and we'll go and connect with other pruners, and everybody also kind of tends to have their own little territories that they set up. And there is a database with all the trees with Trees New York. And what we do is we can also mark as well trees that we've worked on, and kind of mark out boundaries and say, like, so I'm the citizen pruner for this neighborhood, so this tends to be my area. Can there be other citizen pruners? Absolutely. Like four other people can totally join for my block. It's not like, oh, this is my territory. But it just lets you know that there is someone there. But territories can overlap, and the more the merrier. Absolutely. The only thing is that we're not allowed to mess with roots. So in terms of pruning back roots or removing obstructive roots, like roots that have started kind of growing, sometimes they start breaking the concrete and things like that. And people are like, oh, we got to cut that root. That you have to get the city, because that is messing with sidewalks and kind of below the ground. So it's messing with infrastructure. So the Parks Department has to do that. So you can put in a request. But if it's just in terms of like digging in, the soil, aerating it, because that soil can get very easily compacted, and then adding, let's say, some plants to your tree pit to kind of help with also aeration, but but also to kind of lock in, sequester some more moisture and such. It's wonderful. So definitely check out if you have similar program. We have another program here called Super Stewards. I'm also in that program, and I have gotten all their certifications but one that I need to see, because it immediately gets filled every time they put a new training. Like literally same day it gets completely filled, and that one is a shorekeeper. So I really want to get that training, but I am a trail maintainer. I have a trail that I am assigned at a local park to manage, and I'm a care captain as well. So for my neighborhood, and yeah, it opens up a lot of doors. It's really amazing training, and you can actually get permits to work in city parks. So it's not just street trees, but now you can actually work in city parks. And yeah, it's really, really cool. And it's free. So Super Stewards is free. All the training is free. Getting assigned a trail, all that is free. They also have their own app that they launched, I think, like 2 years ago, that also has where one, you can put in reports. So let's say there's a broken branch that can really hurt someone, you can do that. You can also say, I worked on this sector today. I removed a bunch of wild rose, things like that. And yeah, like it's a whole reporting system, not only reporting what you worked on, but also things that the Parks Department might have to take care of or bring in a contractor to do. And yeah, it's wonderful. I really recommend trying to do those types of things if you can. Also, just different organizations. Try to see if you have different groups. Sometimes they're called Friends of, and then insert park name. They'll have those types of groups, or here as well. For instance, we have different volunteer groups that are super stewards that then come together to form other groups. So for instance, there's an invasive vine squad that I have volunteered with. That's always a workout because we go in and into these areas that have not had any maintenance for decades to get rid of invasive vines, and they're all super stewards. And so we just have to be very careful that we're cutting the right thing and the right way as well, so that especially areas that are they're trying to like beautify the neighborhood or fix up areas of different parks, and they just don't have the manpower to do so. And so they'll bring in these volunteer squads. They'll always check to see if you have one in your local area that you can participate in, because it's also a great way to learn how to identify different plants as well, and also ecosystem management. So yeah, I recommend that. But thanks so much for your questions. All right, I wanted to talk today a little bit about pests. So I've gotten quite a few folks reaching out with questions about pests. And it's that time of year, at least if you're here in the Northern Hemisphere, where, we're getting those, it's the growing season. It's the growing season. It's warmer. We have a lot more to contend with that we didn't have in the winter. Now, can we still have pests in the winter? Absolutely. Especially in our homes, if we keep it relatively warm, lots of pests will just hang out and continue to wreak havoc, no matter the temperature here because it's comfortable in our homes. But there are also pests that even if your home got very chilly in the winter, would still overwinter. They will still survive. So there are things like scale, even mealybugs, even sometimes spider mites. They will overwinter successfully. So they'll either retreat into the soil, retreat into kind of nooks and crannies of the plant, or the adults will die off and they will lay eggs. And those eggs will kind of go through a dormancy period while it's cold. And then as soon as it starts to warm up, they will hatch and emerge and start to do the whole infestation of cycle all over again. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on how to identify some of these pests because you might not even know, right? Sometimes the first signs that you might see that there's even anything wrong with the plant. Let me put this on do not disturb. Sorry, it was a spam phone call. Uh, and yeah, so sometimes the first thing that you see is a yellow leaf, right? That might be the first thing you notice. Sometimes the leaf hasn't even started turning yellow, but rather your tree, or let's say your philodendron, it just starts looking a little off. It starts looking a little droopy, and you're like, I just watered it. It shouldn't look like that. So you start to see these types of signs, and then it's not until you really kind of get a close-up examination of the plant you might start to see some more signs. So I'm gonna show you. Let's see here. Doo -doo. Let me share my screen and just give you a little overview of some pests and also some friends. So I wanted to throw that in there too. So because it's not always, bad. Sometimes people think, oh my God, there's something in my plant. Um, and it's immediately a bad thing. And it's not. It's not. There's our plant pots are a little ecosystem. There's a lot going on in there, and it's not all bad. So no worries about that. But yeah, welcome again to another Urban Garden Learning Series session. And I offer these in different orders. Sometimes we have classes, we have Q&As, sometimes there's plant clinics, and of course open forums where we just talk about anything. For those that might be new here, the open forums are also days that you could absolutely present if you wanted to. So if there's something you want to show, maybe a tried and true method that you've been using to battle pests or repot your plants or anything like that, definitely email me and let me know. I'm happy to give you the floor. So this is all about community and connection. So I would totally be happy, so we can set that up. And so it's open to anyone. So even if you don't want to do a full presentation, you're like, maybe I want to talk for like 10 minutes. Sure, absolutely. You have the floor. So let me know, and we can set it up just so I know to have that time carved out for you. But yeah, so identifying and managing houseplant pests and friends. So here we go. So sometimes, right, we see something on our plant and we see that it's moving, we see that it's alive, and most people, right, their first instinct is, oh no, this is bad. This is absolutely bad. For instance, these little yellow critters that are on this plant, these guys are aphids. These are definitely foes. These are not friends. You don't want to have them on your plant. These are very easily removed, thankfully. You can literally rinse your plant out underwater. You can apply some like horticultural oil on your plant, or um, you know, if you're inclined, you can also use a systemic, but usually manual removal is best for aphids. You can just go ahead and wash them off, use your hand, use even a paintbrush to get into the nooks and crannies. But these really can just kind of come off, and then you just have to kind of rinse your plant off at least once every week for no less than 6 weeks. So usually 10 weeks tends to be the safe approximation. But yeah, you just have to be consistent about it so that you make sure that none of these guys have any stragglers. Aphids can be a little annoying, more so because if you find one, that's it. That means that that one can easily become all of these. So they reproduce asexually. So they don't need to have a mate in order to reproduce. So they essentially make little clones of themselves, and all they do is latch onto your plant and suck out all of the sugars, plant sugars, sugar water essentially. Um, and yeah, so that's what we're seeing, these little yellow guys. Now, you might look into your pot and then see springtails. So they're very small. If you maybe try to touch them or move them with your finger, they would jump, hence the name springtails. Uh, so this is obviously a blown up picture, so they look a little bit bigger than they would in real life. They're very, very, very small. And you might panic because you're like, oh my gosh, what is this? Why is it in my soil? These are very often, they really like terracotta pots, especially. I always find them in the saucers of my terracotta pots. So they'll be coming out of the drainage holes of the actual plant, and then hanging out on the saucer. These are friends. These are not harming your plants in any way. They are just eating decomposing materials inside of your soil. They're helping basically break down the materials that make it much easier for your plant to then access those nutrients. So things like wood chips, they will break those down. Just all these like fibers that you might have there, cocoa coir, things like that. They break it down, and then in turn, it's good for your plant because now your plant can use up that material and access that carbon that it otherwise, would have to wait maybe years before that would just naturally break down. Um, and they outcompete fungus gnats, so they eat mold. And one, you don't want your plant to have mold. And I mean, there are some good molds definitely that won't harm your plant. But overall, we typically don't want mold on our plants, and especially if you have a history of dealing with fungus gnats, especially if you have plants that, let's say, want to stay moist for long periods of time. They don't want to go completely dry. And so now that is going to make them more susceptible to potential mold issues. So having springtails is actually a bonus, is a great, either they came with your plant already or they found their way there. But regardless, you want them. So don't try to murder them. Don't try to get rid of them. They are not going to leave the plant pot. They need that moisture to survive. They can't survive in drier, well, at least the species that tend to live in our pots, they can't survive in drier environments. They will die. And they also need to be close to their food source. So they will stay in that plant pot. They don't bite. They don't do anything. They don't harm anything. So, it's just great to you see them, and that it's a good thing. It's definitely a friend. So don't panic if you happen to see them. Um, Another really interesting thing to consider is, plants, of course, they have their own immune systems. So they're not, as I say here, they're not completely helpless. They will try to defend themselves. So plants have all these, they can create little chemical cocktails to deter different pests. Many plants can make themselves bitter. Some will produce kind of poisonous things like different types of alkaloids that are actually deadly to pests. And then there are other types of things like oils, so like terpenes, so things like lavender, mint, all these like really amazing aromatic plants. Uh, those are actually meant to deter pests. Doesn't work on humans though, right? We think it smells amazing, but for pests, not necessarily the case. Of course, things like even if like for instance, clove. So clove oil, so the eugenol is something that clove produces, which for a small beetle or something that were to try to eat the clove, that would easily kill a small beetle. But for us, what we use eugenol for is a numbing agent. So if anybody here has gone to the dentist, that they will put like a numbing agent, sometimes like a cream that you will put on, and it kind of it's like a local anesthetic. It's usually eugenol, and that's comes from cloves, and that will just numb out that area. And so we typically use a lot of these chemicals that plants produce to protect themselves. We have found as humans many different uses for them. But plants can't completely protect themselves. And one big problem is that stressed plants will actually attract pests. And how, may you ask, is plants can actually emit uh, kind of sounds, basically. So they're kind of these ultrasonic type of waves that they will emit that we cannot pick up. There are different types of tools that people are now making much more mainstream that you can purchase to kind of hear these for yourself. But there's been plenty of tests done. And so plants, for instance, that are getting too dry, they're going through a drought period, let's say. So tomatoes especially have been used in a lot of experiments. And so they will purposely deprive them of water. And they'll actually pick up these sounds, and they will start to pick up in terms of like their frequency. And what ends up happening is that it's just kind of we're trying to still, scientists are still trying to figure out as to why exactly these sounds might be emitted. Something is just like a response, so it's not that they're like trying to call out for help necessarily, but that it's just a sound that is happening. But what happens is a lot of pests can hear these sounds, and so they will take advantage of a plant's vulnerability. And so let's talk about your house plants, right? Our house plants, sometimes they go through very stressful periods, especially when they're brand new. They come into a home and they have to acclimate to this new environment. This can be a very, very stressful time for them. Um, Other potential stressors, even just being moved within the home. You might have, let's say, a ficus that you have in a southeast window for a few years, and now maybe your building's putting up scaffolding. That's actually happening a few blocks down. They put up scaffolding, and so folks are having to move their house plants to other parts of their household, right? Because they can't they that situation is not going to be tenable for the time being. So even just within your home, moving a plant can be stressful. Also, let's say your schedule got really busy, right? Your schedule got really busy and you miss a watering. That's stressful. Let's say it's time for repotting, right? You had to upgrade your plant because it's already bursting out of its pot. You had no choice. It's good. Obviously, the plant needed the upgrade, but this transition, it's under stress. So that's just a handful of examples of why your house plant might become stressed. But there's so many reasons. Um, and this is just going to make them more attractive to pests. Pests are going to find their way to them, and they're going to take advantage while the plant's immune system is low to try to get as many resources as they can from them. So So if you have plants that are in a weird transitional type of situation, I would suggest just keep a bigger, like a, kind of keep them more at the forefront of your mind, check on them a little bit more often, just to make sure you catch anything before it becomes, unmanageable. You don't want to, have to toss the plant. So I would just say, just try to, even set a phone reminder, or I like to create a routine, or especially like before bed. I try to do a little peruse of, of like any quarantine plants and things like that. So I just tie it to my bedtime routine. Maybe you would prefer something like that in the morning. You're like, oh, while I'm having my morning coffee, I would prefer to kind of walk around and look. Um, Whatever works, if you want to kind of tie it into something else that you already do, just to so that it's something that you're doing more often. I highly recommend it because it definitely helps, just before something really like a whole infestation happens. Because it happens, you get really busy, let's say work. What if you have family over, or you go on vacation even? All these reasons why you just might not be as present with your houseplants. Um, it happens, things happen, and then you have to just, make sure, like, all right, let me see if my plant's okay, and then try to catch anything that might be wrong. So pestiferous foes. I love the word pestiferous. Fungus gnats. So I mentioned fungus gnats a moment ago. So fungus gnats are very interesting. They are more of an annoyance as an adult more than anything. The adults are not eating your plants. They're not, harming you. They don't bite. But they do kind of get in the way. It can get very, very annoying. And then usually that's a sign, one, that some of your plants are either staying too moist, but there are some plants that want to stay like that, right? So you might already know that. uh, Sometimes it's your plant is staying too moist and it's not supposed to. It's supposed to be a lot drier. Um, so this can be a signal that there is a potential issue. Sometimes they just come with a new plant. This is one of those unavoidable things where it's like, well, I bought the plant and it was already soaked. So you kind of brought the fungus gnats with you. One way to deal with them is yellow sticky traps. There are plenty of sticky traps that you can buy. Some are come in really cool shapes. They have some that look like butterflies. They work wonderfully. You just stick them in your soil, and the fungus gnats are attracted to the color yellow. So they will just land on that sticky trap. They're very bad flyers, very, very bad flyers. And really, that's how you know you have them, is essentially you just have a little thing that's like buzzing around you. You'll just start to notice them, or they're buzzing around your plants. They're not as fast as fruit flies. They're smaller than fruit flies. And again, as I said, they're kind of awkward flyers. In terms of dealing with them, sure, insecticides technically would work. But I feel like they're not that bad that it would warrant having to use insecticides inside your home. One of the quickest ways to fix it is just let your plant dry out. They need moist soil, one, to survive and eat, because they need the fungus that's growing in the moist soil. Uh, Two, they will lay their eggs in moist soil, and the larva can only survive in moist soil. So if you let your plant completely dry, like bone dry, this tends to kill anything that might be in the soil in terms of the larva. And so you kind of then the adults just die off, and you kind of cut the life cycle short. So you just won't have them coming back. Uh, if you're thinking, well, that's not really an option. Like, I have a peace lily, I can't let that become bone dry. The poor thing's gonna die. So then you have other options. One is, if you do have any fungus on your soil, remove that from the topsoil. Just try to remove as much as you can so that they don't have any food source. I should have added it here, but another option could be, if you really have a lot of fungus gnats and you have a lot of plants, is just buy springtails. Buy springtails and just add them to your plant pots. That would be one of the easiest ways and most kind of like laid back ways to deal with it, is just to purchase some springtails and add them to your plants yourself. They will outcompete the fungus gnats, and then it won't be a problem anymore. They'll just keep reproducing and having a fun old time in your house plant, not bothering your house plant in any way. Another thing is if you, let's say you have a lot of larvae. Now, the larvae will not really do any damage if it's like an established plant, right? Now, if a plant is a new cutting, let's say that you're trying to, you root it in water and you just transferred it into soil. So they're very fine roots and they're kind of really in the first couple inches of the soil. Then you might have to worry because the larva will try to attack these kind of new roots. They will try to attack them. Also, they will attack the root of seedlings. So much tinier, much more shallow roots. They will go after that as a potential food source. So those plants you have to worry about. If it's a much mature plant, again, you could just let it dry out, and that tends to do the trick. But let's say, let's say it's like a really bad situation. There's a lot of larvae. You can see the larvae as you're kind of digging through the soil. You're not sure what to do. One option is a hydrogen peroxide drench. I'm going to talk more about this in a moment when I talk about like different methodologies. But this isn't something you want to do repeatedly. So hydrogen peroxide, even though it's diluted, it can be very corrosive, especially to young roots. It can scar roots, might not kill them if it's diluted enough, but it can actually cause like scarring and burning. So you don't, it's not something you want to use like, oh my gosh, I see larva, use it. And then a few weeks later, I see larva, use it. It's something you might want to even space out like every 6 months. You don't want to kind of do it more than that. And it's not that you have to do it preventatively, not at all. I just mean in terms of you do it and then maybe 6 months later you see larva again. You really want to space that out. It's not a kind of use case, right? That you want to be using very often. It could end up killing your like the actual cure, right? The methodology can end up actually killing the plant because it's very strong. But it will also kill everything inside the soil. So not only the foes, but any friends. So it will kill any beneficial bacteria, beneficial molds or fungi, any beneficial creatures like springtails. It will completely annihilate anything that is present in your mix. Another thing is Ceylon cinnamon. So make sure it's actual Ceylon cinnamon powder. You can put that on top of your soil. That combats the actual fungus, and so in turn kind of cuts off the food source to fungus gnats. So that's a good one to check out. To kind of make that an extra level, is I recommend mixing it with some diatomaceous earth, placing that on top of the soil. The diatomaceous earth won't let the larva emerge. It'll kill the larva before they can emerge from in the soil because you'll be kind of blanketing the top of the soil with the mix. And it's a very effective way to also cut that life cycle short. Yeah, and it won't hurt your plant. So that's the best way. As I mentioned, yellow sticky traps are a pretty effective way of getting those adults. I should have added it here too, but there's also things called they call them catchies, like the gnat catchy. There are these little fans that are bladeless, so they're just like little ovals, and you can place them by your plants that are getting a lot of fungus gnats. You turn it on, and it's like it sucks in the air like a little vacuum. And as I mentioned, they can't fly very well. So as they approach your plant, they will end up getting sucked up by the fan. And it has like a little chamber where it drops them in, and you can just dump that out. And also a really passive, laid back way of handling it. I love it. I have quite a few. They're knockoffs of the like brand name one. And I haven't had to use them in years, but when I did have to use them, they were wonderful. So I do recommend them all the time. Now let's talk about some other types of actual. So these are some pests you would have to kind of worry about. So scale. So scale are really interesting. They will actually secrete this kind of wax that creates this little turtle shell type of barrier over them. And the actual insect is underneath, attaching itself to the actual plant, usually along the vein, because then that's where they can, gain access to the sugar water that's within the plant. And they usually will pick a spot and kind of camp out right there. So, they really do look, they kind of become like crusty. So you would have to really like work on removing them. So they have that little dot in the middle that's called a nucleus, and they come in all different colors. So sometimes you might see them white. They might be like a beige or like a yellow kind of beige to even a darker brown. So they really come in so many different shades. So don't just think, oh yeah, it's only if it's white or only if it's like a chocolate colored brown. They really do come in so many different colors. And they're very resistant to kind of spray on applications. So things like horticultural oils, even rubbing alcohol, because they again created this little barrier that they kind of enclose themselves. Like think of it, it's like, just a little shelter. And so if you spray them, unless there's like a little opening, it really isn't going to hit the actual insect. So you're going to have to go in there. Really manual removal ends up being the best way. Now you could wet a piece of paper towel, put a little bit of dish soap on there, and then just kind of do a preliminary wipe, see how many you can actually remove. Usually it's the babies that haven't like really locked in yet. You can remove quite a few. And then you're going to have some big ones that are going to need, a little bit more attention. So what you can use is actually a needle. So a sewing needle, and you can go and just kind of really kind of wedge it, and they end up kind of popping off. And so just make sure that you have like some white paper towels or something under you where you can see where they land, so that you do it like on a table away from other plants, because you don't want to flick them off and have them end up in another plant, and then you're at, starting all over again. But yeah, it's really just like really removing. And then once you've done so, then you can go ahead and spray the plant down with rubbing alcohol if you'd like, if you have a preferred horticultural oil that you'd like to use. But then, once it's like a baseline, clear playing field, you can go ahead and, apply something just for good measure to see if there are any small babies, and also just as a preventative. So it can get really bad. These will also affect a lot of different plants. So not just kind of like foliage plants, like, philodendrons or, or like aglaonemas or things like that, but they will also go after succulents and cacti. So there are some types of pests that just don't tend to appear on certain types of plants, but scale is kind of equal opportunity. It just kind of goes wherever it can go. And of course, there are some that are specialized for certain types of plants. But one interesting thing is that I mentioned is you're seeing some pictures of ants here. So you see these ants. So they're sometimes one great indicator is if you start to see ants on your plant, is that there might be some type of pest that the ants tend to work with. They have a symbiotic relationship with. Scale is one of those insects where they will protect the scale in exchange for sugars that the scale will give them. And so they will protect the scale from attack. Usually it's other insects, right? And they will protect them because they're being fed, essentially. And a lot of different types of insects, like even like mealy bugs, they are related to scale insects. And these ants will actually kind of protect them like a shepherd and a herd. They will have like little areas that they will kind of patrol around and take care of these insects because again they're getting sugar water is as an exchange. So they're getting these little bribes essentially, and they will be their soldiers. They'll be the muscle to protect them while they continue to feast on the plant. So that sometimes is a really good indicator if you start seeing ants on your plants. Just that might be the big cue, right? That they because usually a lot of ants won't go on actual regular. They usually go after leaves that have already fallen, things that they forage like that. Now there are of course species like carpenter ants and things like that that will leaf cutter ants. I mean that will actually attack healthy plants. But typically it's a really good indicator that something's up. Something is awry. I also mentioned here dish soap. So yeah, I mentioned like dish soap on a paper towel is really great. Um, Hydrogen peroxide drench, if it's like insanely bad, and especially you see a lot of scale towards the base of the plant, that could mean that there's quite a few that might be in the soil. So you might want to do a hydrogen peroxide drench if it was a really bad infestation. If it's just a couple leaves and you're able to remove them, scale move really slowly. So they aren't something that, can like run over and infect another plant. It's a very slow moving creature. uh, but at the same time, you just kind of want to just be mindful and kind of when you're working on that plant to have it separated and yeah, just it's scale is something you can keep up with, and it doesn't necessarily mean the death of your plant. So highly recommend trying to handle it. It'll be worth it if especially if you really care about the plant. This was like a gift or something. It's something you can fix. Mealy bugs. So mealy bugs is we're going up in the annoyance scale. These are a little bit more difficult. Sometimes, you might really have to keep up with the removal of them for several weeks, just kind of treating your plant because they will have a lot of babies. They will actually create little nests. One great indicator that you have mealy bugs, even just all pests really, but you might start to see like feel stickiness on your leaves. You might also see it. So you might kind of see that it looks like there's like droplets or kind of like a residue on your leaf, and then when you touch it, it feels sticky to the touch. So that is usually a great indicator that there's something that's feeding on your plant, and that's basically what's coming out the other end is called honeydew. It's really just plant water, sugar water, but it creates that residue on your leaf. With these guys, one, the sticky leaves is a great indicator, and two, you will start to see kind of little white cottony type of residue. Usually this could be the actual mealy bugs themselves, or these could be nests that they create. They like to create them more so in nooks and crannies in the plant, but they will do them on the leaves as well, like in plain view. Usually they like to hang out on the underside of the leaves as well, just, for hiding. So always check those undersides of your leaves. And in terms of removal, really insecticides, as I mentioned, are indeed effective if you remove a bunch of the adults and now you want to make sure you get any stragglers, like any babies. Horticultural oils are really good. But they can also be removed manually. So if your plant is one that you can bring over to the sink, apply a little bit of dish soap. When you're working with dish soap, always make sure that you're using a non-corrosive, a non-degreasing. So non-degreasing dish soap. Uh, if you're in a pinch, a drop of Dawn isn't going to necessarily harm the plant, but it's just something that you don't want to use all the time because your plants do have a waxy cuticle that protects them. It's like a layer over them, uh, and you don't want to degrade that. But you could use Castile soap. So Castile soap is great. And essentially, you can take the plant, kind of do a tilt so that all the soap isn't going into the soil, kind of massage between the stems, massage the leaves, really get that soap on there, wait about 5 minutes or so, and then give it a really good rinse. And then I like to go over it with some rubbing alcohol. I really recommend also you can use a Q-tip with rubbing alcohol as well, or there are some really great tools. I don't know if I have one. I'll check if I mean, I have them, but I don't know if I have it accessible. They're these little pens that are meant for paint correction, for actual like painting when you're painting with acrylics and things like that. And what you do is you fill it up with rubbing alcohol and you squeeze it and it wets the felt tip. And then you can go over the area of the painting, let's say, that you're trying to correct. I have found that this is wonderful for applying alcohol onto very specific and kind of like the nooks and crannies where it's like really hard for you to get in there with your hands. So it's like a little fine paintbrush, and it gets soaked with the rubbing alcohol, and then you can just really get in there, and it works wonderfully. You could just have to refill it. It works great. So I highly recommend that. If it's like a substantial, like you did not notice and your whole plant is completely infested, um, it might be something you might want to do a hydrogen peroxide drench, but usually, if you're kind of managing the top side, it's also very easy. It's much easier to see. I think with scale, I've had a lot of clients that panic when they see certain things on their leaves or on their stems that look like scale. So sometimes the beginnings of a new shoot, the beginnings of aerial roots, even. So certain plants have very pronounced lenticels, which are kind of pores that allow for air to kind of go in and out of different parts of the plants, like on the stem and things like that. That you can totally misidentify and think, oh my gosh, is this supposed to be here? Maybe this is scale. So scale can sometimes be a little bit harder to really realize what you're looking at. Mealy bugs are pretty straightforward. They're very vibrant, and so it's white, very bright, and it's something that you can usually see immediately. You can also use diatomaceous earth on the soil as well if you're afraid that maybe some mealy bugs might have gone into your soil, and you're treating the top side. It's a nice kind of just preemptive measure to make sure you're getting anything that might be going into the soil. Spider mites. So some of you might have experience with spider mites. Spider mites are definitely annoying, but they're also one that you can deal with. We can deal with. Usually though, if it gets to that point where it's in like the top picture where it's a full-on web, and it's not a spider web, so they are mites. They are related. They're in the arachnid family. So they will create these kind of webs. That might be a little late, but if that's a pretty substantial infestation, if like the whole thing is web, you might want to try to still save them. But I completely understand if it's that scale of an infestation, you might want to just get rid of the plant. But if you still want it, it's at the beginning of an infestation, or you still want to give it a try because maybe you've had this plant for a really long time, you can go ahead and use quite a few things to manage it. Another indicator when it's first starting is you'll get these little spots on your leaves, where you'll see either like dots, really fine dots, or it could also be patches, like that leaf that you're seeing here, just especially the dots. And that's very indicative of, spider mite kind of infestations. So, also here, as I mentioned, the horticultural oil is effective against the very young, um, kind of offspring, but it's a little bit more difficult to use on the adults. They can come in so many different colors. Um, and one way is first manual removal. So that's the first thing is take it over to the sink and completely wash that plant off. Add that little bit of dish soap to it. You want to go over it with some alcohol, rubbing alcohol. Um, again, hydrogen peroxide drench, you just have to measure how bad of an infestation it is. You can use things like diatomaceous earth in the soil. You can also apply it on the leaf directly with a little paintbrush, just kind of give it a little bit of diatomaceous uh, earth kind of paint, like it's like a powder. So you're just kind of applying it into the nooks and crannies, onto the top and bottom of the leaves, just to give them a little bit of a break, to kind of protect them against any more predation. Now, those leaves, the damage that the leaves will have sustained will not kind of heal. So that leaf is always going to look really messed up moving forward. I just want to make sure I mention that. So sometimes, plants will definitely survive these types of infestations, but they will not survive unscathed. So you will find them with some markings that indicates that it had gone through that. And yeah, just continue treating. There are certain things like neem that can be used. Just know that if you're ever using neem oil, you do have to remove the plant. You have to remove it from the sun for like at least a week or so, because the neem oil makes the plants more photosensitive. So it can make them more susceptible to like getting like sunburned essentially. So it can cause that type of issue. So just keep that in mind. Thrips. Now thrips are the worst. I hate thrips. I hate them with a passion. I would rather have mealybugs or spider mites, even aphids. I would rather have any of them versus thrips. We've gotten thrips, I think, 3 times now, and over the years, and it's always a really big fight. Um, we end up losing a lot of plants, or a lot of plants lose all their leaves, and so we're kind of starting over again. So this is something that can definitely decimate your plants. So there are some thrips that can fly. In some species, it's only the male that can fly, but they will definitely spread very quickly to your other plants. And they're very, 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 very difficult to get rid of. If it's a really bad infestation, you might just want to throw out plants. We definitely wanted to try to save them. So what we did is we tried integrated pest management. We added beneficial mites, beneficial like lacewing larvae, ladybugs, and that's really what ended up helping us, because we needed essentially to get something to eat them, because otherwise we could not keep up. It was really, really bad. And now we just have to be a little bit just more cognizant of like new plants when we're bringing them in and having them in quarantine and really checking them, so that nothing like that gets in again, because that is so bad. It's so bad. They can come in different colors as well. There's different species. You can use horticultural oils against them when they're still really young. But you do want to also have some manual removal. Some of them, like I mentioned, will fly. So it's not, you want to make sure that you are really kind of just squish them if you can. When I'm watering plants, I haven't seen one in a while now, but if I saw one, I just went ahead and squeezed it, because I could not give it a chance to fly or jump or anything. And so I just murdered them upon sight. So, um, yeah, it's not good. You can use things like dish soap. You can use things like rubbing alcohol. Um, you can use diatomaceous earth as well in the soil. But thrips, it's something that is just so bad. I wouldn't even say just treat it once a week. I would say you would have to treat like 2 to 3 times a week. Is just taking the plant, really looking at it. If you don't want to wet the soil, just watering, washing the plant off or spraying it with rubbing alcohol several times a week. Just something to treat it, something that will potentially kill anything that's living on it. You just have to be much more like persistent with it because yeah, thrips are just, oh my gosh, horrible. One thing though is that they are attracted to sticky traps as well, but especially the color blue. So for those that do fly, you can actually just get the same kind of sticky traps, but they come in blue, and that will catch any of the males or other species that can fly. It will catch them for you, and so that definitely helps kind of at least stop the reproduction, right? It just stops the adults from flying around so that you have a time to kind of catch up and kill any infestations that are starting up. There are also things that affect our roots. There are plenty of different pests, but one that's more prevalent that people can find in their houseplants are the root knot nematodes. So they're not really an insect, and they're not really like an actual worm. They're a whole little grouping in themselves, but they will create what are called galls. So galls in all plants, essentially, this can just end up causing a little bit of stress to the root systems, though. Usually, when galls are created on the top side of plants, either on the leaves or the branches or the bark, like trunks. Uh, Essentially, it's a way of the plant protecting itself. It kind of creates like a cyst to try to kind of section off that part of itself so that whatever is infecting it, whether it is a fungus, a bacteria, or some type of creature, it will try to kind of block them off so that they can't get further into the plant. But then this can cause a lot of damage to their roots. This can, end up causing a lot of stress to them. As I mentioned, like I said, when it happens on the top side, it usually isn't affecting it that much. Um, the plant kind of once it sections it off, it just keeps going on its merry way. So it's usually, these galls aren't affecting the leaves or anything like that. Like they are forming growths on the leaves, but the leaf itself is still working. So it's not necessarily impeding it from getting resources. However, the root nematodes, those do get in the way of the plants getting resources. And so because they're causing that strain and they're kind of causing that extra growth on the root membranes, this can sometimes cause damage to like the root hairs, to areas in the roots that would be collecting water and nutrients. And this can make the plant even more stressed. So this is why, you might see that and go, oh my gosh. So here's just a comparison of one with root nematodes. You see the kind of galls that they create, and then the actual roots of the same type of plant, much more fibrous, gall-free. So you can just see kind of what happens there. But yeah, these you would have to definitely. There are things you can add to the mixes, to your potting mix. There are kind of root-based insecticides that are I forgot what it's called. They're not insecticides. I'm forgetting what it's called for like nematodes specifically, but there are some specifically for this type of pest that you can get. That's like a liquid that you can add to your plants. This is not something that's typical in house plants. This is more so in plants that tend to be kept outside if you bring your plants out, and especially in warmer, humid, moist environments. This might be a little bit more prevalent there. So if you're like here in an apartment in New York City, I've never come across this myself. Um, and so it's not something that's very prevalent here. But again, if you do have your plants like outside, this can be something, and especially if you're using things like pond water, well water, um, you know, where or you're reusing kind of soil, or you're using soil from your own yard, things like that can get introduced to your potted plants. Houseflies. So you might think, what are you talking about? A housefly? How is that going to hurt a plant? Um, so houseflies, it's more so if you are if you've had plants that are kind of going through root rot, so either you're unaware or you are aware that there's root rot in your plants, if you end up getting a housefly that comes into your house and one of your plants has active root rot, it will be attracted to that plant and it will lay its eggs in there. And the maggots, the larvae, will actually start to eat the plant itself. They'll start to make their way through the soil and start to eat the plant. Um, so sometimes a plant that has root rot, you can't save it. Sometimes you can, but this is just something to consider that house flies will go after. They will lay their eggs in pots where a plant is actively going through root rot. And they will eat. They will just eat it. Also, if a plant has had a severe wound, it's like something like you just divided roots. Let's say you cut some roots, and so the plant has an active wound that might be slightly exposed above the soil, things like that. Flies will lay their eggs in those areas because that's a easy food source for their larvae. So it's something you might not think about, like housefly, but it can actually hurt your plants. So it's just something to keep in mind. So non-threatening visitors. So sometimes you might see a bunch of different types of critters in your plants, and as I mentioned, they're not always something you don't want in there. So for instance, pill bugs. You might see something like an isopod called isopods. You might see what I've heard them call pill bugs, sow bugs. I've heard them call like woodlouts, also roly-polies. So sometimes you might see these. Of course, they're not going to be these like might not be the big ones. They might be little ones. And so usually these guys are just eating again, kind of they're they're decomposers. They're essentially just eating anything that's breaking down. So wood chips that are in your soil, they're just kind of breaking down all that organic material. They're not interested in your plant or your plant's roots. They're just focused on kind of all the organic matter around it. So if your plant is in going through root rot, it is actively rotting, and so for them, then that will be a food source. But if it's a healthy plant, you don't have to worry if you find isopods in your mixes. They're really not gonna hurt your plants like that. It's only if your plant is really in that like rotting stage, they're just gonna do their job and clean up the mess. So a lot of isopods, along with springtails, they're usually called cleanup crews in terrariums, and so you add them purposefully to terrariums with live plants because as leaves fall, plants die, they will just eat. They're like little Roombas and will just eat that. And you don't, they just clean it up. They clean it up. So they're not going after any of the healthy plants, but if one of let's say a piece of a pothos were to die, and they will break it down and it'll be like it was never there. So they just do their jobs. But if you see them in your house plant and your house plant is healthy, you don't have to worry about it. As I mentioned, springtails, you don't have to panic. They're just also doing their job, but they're not trying to harm your plants. So no need to panic. Centipedes. I should put a trigger warning behind these. Sorry. We're showing insects, but things like centipedes, also they are not going to harm your plants. They're carnivorous. They're not going to hurt your plants in any way. But they will actually potentially eat any pests, any smaller pests, things like that. They will feed on them, but they do tend to sleep and rest under the soil. So you might find one in your potted plant, but again, it's nothing that's going to harm your plant. You might not like it personally. I, for one, am very scared of centipedes. I'm trying to work through my fear. But yeah, they will not harm your plant. So, so don't worry about that. Ladybugs. So certain types of small beetles like this, they will appear on your plant, and it's usually they're just having a snack. There might be a pest on your plant that they're eating. You can actually purchase these in order to use them as a form of integrative pest management and then add them to your plants on purpose. So Brian and I have done this for years. We've bought packs of anywhere from 500 to 1,500 ladybugs to release, and they will go after aphids. They will go after, especially after mealybugs as well. So they'll go after an array of pests. So you end up, kind of putting them to work. They will feed if you have a very, very big infestation. Spiders will not harm your plant. Sometimes people will see a web and immediately think spider mites, and sometimes it's just a house spider. For us, if we get a lot of house spiders here, and I just kind of let them hang out in the plants. I'm like, sure, if you want to go in there or you want to hang out on the plant shelf, go ahead. They'll catch anything with their webs. I love when we find jumping spiders. Jumping spiders are always awesome. Brian and I have kept pet jumping spiders. We've bought several species of jumping spiders, and they have very short lifespans. They live a year to 2 years. We've had many that made it past 2 years and then passed away. But they make a really fun pet, very inquisitive. You can handle them. It's very, very cool. But house spiders, they're just hanging out and eating the pests, and they're not going to harm your plant. So if you see them in your plant, don't panic. Lacewings. So green lacewings. These you might end up seeing on your plants. They are not going to be harming your plants. These are actually carnivorous, and they feed on a lot of different pests, and it's especially their larvae that look like little. Here we go. Um, they've been compared to kind of being like a little alligator. They have these pretty insane jaws. I'm not sure if you can really see it. So it's going after some aphids right here in this photo. But they have these really cool pincers, and they just lock on to different types of pests, and they will feed on them. And now there are some larvae of lacewings that they come in different colors. So some will be like much more green. Sometimes they might have kind of more white on them, and they might end up actually looking like really big mealy bugs. But this is a type of kind of disguise so that they can infiltrate a big group of mealy bugs, kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing, in order to get close and feed on those mealy bugs. They will move very differently from mealy bugs. They will look similar if you just kind of glanced at them, but they will be like really fast, like super, super fast. Mealy bugs are not that fast. And so usually that's a great indicator that you have some on your plant, and just kind of look to see if it is actively eating some mealy bugs. But they move really, really fast. I wish I had filmed. We had some green lacewing larvae that was on a plant it was a Hoya that had mealy bugs, and I wish I would have recorded it, but it moves so much faster. And yeah, it's a really effective way of dealing with them with pests. And you can purchase them, and they come in these little, they look like almost like the pill packets with little chambers, and there's one larva per chamber because they will cannibalize. And so you can just kind of pop it like a pill, pop it, and you put it on your plant. And yeah, they go to town. And then once they mature, they have wings. I said leaves. They have wings. They develop wings, and then they can fly away. And yeah, these are things you want to have on your plants. I purposely catch these in the summer. They like to come to our like the porch light, and I will catch them with a net. I have a butterfly net. I will purposely catch them and then bring them inside. And so it's always good, just in case, even if I don't see a pest on any of my plants. I like to just for good measure, I bring in things just to see if it'll catch anything that I missed. And then lastly, just some effective tools to have in your arsenal at home, just in case. So things that you may already have at home. So dishwashing liquid. As I mentioned, Castile soap is honestly the best and the safest for your plants. But if you're in a pinch, like you just discovered a bunch of mealybugs or a bunch of spider mites on your plant, using like a drop or two of Dawn isn't gonna really do that much damage to the plant. So just, use it and then go and get some Castile soap. So for future treatments, you just don't want to consistently be using like a degreasing type of dish soap. It will eventually cause some more harm to the plant. Having hydrogen peroxide at home. That's something a lot of folks have, in their medicine cabinets, under their bathroom cabinets, right, for cuts and scrapes. So that might be something you already have. Same with rubbing alcohol. Brushes. You might have brushes, you might not. But having like little paint brushes or things like that, very, very effective to have in if you want to have I have like a little toolbox that's all like plant stuff. So throw some brushes in there. Ceylon cinnamon. You might already have that in your spice cabinet. It's something that you can go ahead and use with your plants. And then some essential oils. I put a little asterisk there because there are some that you can use, but you always want to be careful with essential oils. Prolonged use or exposure to them can cause things like headaches. It can be very harmful to some pets. There are certain essential oils that can be toxic to pets, cause liver toxicity. So just, keep that in mind. And also with very young children can cause burning in the nasal passages. It's just, that's what, hence the asterisk. It has a lot of warning labels, but this is something that can be added to DIY sprays. I'll show you an example of one in the next slide, but that you can use on some of your plants. And then things you might want to purchase to kind of have in case if you have like let's say a bigger collection and you want to make sure you're ready for anything. Having a little squirt bottle. So a little bottle, the squirt, they have like a little nozzle. Those are great. Or a spray nozzle for your sink so that you can wash your plants down like really easily. Having like a bag of diatomaceous earth on hand. They seriously, it lasts forever. I have the same bag I've had for like 5 years. So it really does last a really long time. You might want to get some neem oil or a type of horticultural oil. There are types of systemic insecticides. So systemic insecticides are different in that it's not just a topical application, but systemics go into the plant and essentially poison the plant from the inside so that when the pest goes and bites the plant, it itself gets poisoned. So that's how systemics work. So if you're gonna planning to eat the plant, like it's your basil plant, definitely do not use a systemic insecticides or any type of insecticide on it in your home for anything that you're going to be ingesting. And then sticky traps. You might want to buy some plant sticky traps to have. And as I mentioned, they come in different shapes. I myself have some that are butterflies, but I've seen them shaped as flowers, as bees, as little people. I've seen some really funny sticky traps that you can get and put in your houseplants. So as I mentioned, diatomaceous earth, so it's naturally derived. It's a very fine powder. It's not going to harm your plant. It's depending on the type of diatomaceous earth, where it's sourced from, sometimes it can add a little bit of alkalinity to your soil. But otherwise it's usually pretty neutral and it doesn't decompose. It just stays in your mix. But when you do water it, once it gets wet, one, it makes its way through your soil because it's very fine. But two, it gets kind of mushy and then it really doesn't work as much. So you would just have to apply another layer. If you're bottom watering your plants though, you can kind of apply a layer of diatomaceous earth on top, like if you're fighting pests. And if you're bottom watering, that top layer stays dry, and so you don't have to apply for long periods of time. So yeah, so it works really great. So I mentioned Ceylon cinnamon, and you might be thinking, well, what about it's just cinnamon? Why Ceylon cinnamon? Well, because there are certain cinnamon that's not really cinnamon. So for instance, cassia cinnamon, which is commonly sold in like grocery stores, it's not true cinnamon. It's kind of cinnamon adjacent. It tastes like cinnamon, or it's related like cinnamon, but it's not the same as Ceylon that has these really great antifungal properties. And so if you use like the cassia cinnamon it does not work the same. It will be basically ineffective. It will smell really good, but it'll be ineffective. You really want to use Ceylon cinnamon if you're hoping to use that as like an antifungal. Hydrogen peroxide drenches. So we talked a little bit about that, but you might be wondering, well, how do I do that? So you would want to really dilute it. So it would be 1 part hydrogen peroxide to 4 parts water. So it's really, really diluted. So as I said too, you only want to use it in really extreme cases. So don't use it if you see like 2 mealybugs on your plant. We're talking like a full-on infestation and you've been treating it, let's say, and it's still like, and you just want to completely cleanse that whole plant, not only the top part, but also the soil. Then, yes, go ahead and use the hydrogen peroxide drench. And you don't want to use it very often. I would say to space it out at least 6 months if you're gonna do it again, uh, because this can really, once stress the plant out, and as I mentioned, it can burn and then scar the roots. So it's not something you want to be using very frequently. DIY. Oh, there we go. So sorry, my computer just restarted. So
Yeah, and I become a host.
oh, okay.
So I ended a meeting just in case you cannot come back.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I was like, oh no, it just goes down. All right. So sorry about that, guys. My computer just decided to shut off and start to like it restarted. So sorry about that. Uh, let me wrap up here. Sorry about that. I think there were 2 questions in the chat that disappeared. So if they were in the chat, definitely pop those back in. So sorry about that. That was very unexpected. So sorry about that. But thanks for everyone that's hopping back on. Yep, it very, very odd. Sorry about that. All right. So DIY pest sprays. So these are things you can just make at home on your own. The first one that I'm putting here is my favorite that I personally like to use. So I like to get a spray bottle, empty spray bottle. You can reuse spray bottles with cleaning products. Just make sure that they're cleaned very, very well and completely like dry. And if it's something like bleach, you want to let it sit out for 24 to 48 hours until you can no longer smell the chlorine. And that's a good indicator that that has just evaporated and it's good to go. So yeah, I like to use these bigger spray bottles and I fill it up with I put a tablespoon. I didn't mean to add an S to that. It's a tablespoon of dish soap, then 4 tablespoons of rubbing alcohol, and I fill the whole thing up with water. And so this is great especially if I'm like really applying to something like a Hoya. I had a Hoya compacta that just kept getting mealybugs. Hoyas are just known for mealybugs, and so yeah, it's something that works really wonderfully for a wide array of pest issues. But these are other examples that I have found online. So one is, and so you're gonna melt the neem oil. So neem oil will come kind of in a like thicker, kind of like coconut oil. It kind of comes in this like thicker texture. So you're gonna want to heat it up a little bit to like melt it up. You can use like a double boiler type of method. So it's melted teaspoon of neem oil. Then you can add certain types of essential oils, like 1 to 2 drops of lemon, or tea tree or oregano essential oil. You can do a mix of, maybe 1 lemon, 1 tea tree, or 1 lemon, 1 orange. Um, and then you can fill the rest up with water. So it's a very, very small percentage, and the neem oil in there is going to work as a carrier for that essential oil. So it's not going to be as harsh on your plants. So that's one option. And another option is, using dish soap and some hydrogen peroxide and then filling the whole thing with water. And this is the hydrogen peroxide. This isn't going to be the most stable thing. with the hydrogen peroxide in it, so it doesn't last that long. But this is something, especially if you are treating, let's say, like a bigger tree, like a fig tree or something like that, or something that's really, really bad that you really have to get that hydrogen peroxide on it. Having that mix, it's not going to be good after 24 hours, essentially, that spray mix. But so you're going to have to kind of make it again when you need to use it. So you might want to make smaller batches rather than a big spray bottle unless you're treating a lot of plants at the same time. And then in case, it's really severe, like if your plant is really, really being attacked, sometimes, and you have stuff in your actual soil, a repotting might be needed. This is like in really severe cases. You would completely remove the soil. You might even want to move away from soil and just put it into a hydroponic type of situation. Um, so this is like if it's a really, really bad case. And for cacti, if you're gonna repot, because you cleanse that thing and you have it in a whole new mix, you're gonna want to wait. So usually the rule of thumb is about 10 days before rewatering, but you might want to stretch it out, even up to 3 weeks, before you go ahead and water your cacti, after repotting. It's just usually there's some damage that can happen, and if you were to water too quickly, it's just going to be too much moisture in the soil, and yeah, it can. Whoops. Why is it doing that? There we go. And it can just cause some damage to the plant. And then sphagnum moss. So if you have plants in sphagnum moss that are getting pests, just one, keep in mind that it's not a renewable resource necessarily. There are places that are trying to make their own sphagnum kind of farms. But this isn't, again, it's not a renewable thing, in that it takes like thousands of years to really get good quality sphagnum moss. And so even though there are these places where they're trying to do it in a more sustainable fashion, in the end, it's really not very sustainable. So try to move away from purchasing sphagnum moss. There's so many other media that you can use, for your plants. But if that's what your plant is currently in, you can actually disinfect your sphagnum moss. You can boil it. You can remove your plant from it, put it into a pot, and boil it for 5 to 10 minutes. Really wring it out, let it just dry, and that tends to really do the trick. Other, methods are also taking some sphagnum moss and putting it in the freezer and kind of keeping there for a couple weeks. That's another effective way of potentially killing things that are living in it as well. And then lastly, some fertilizer friends. So some friends that might help kind of feed your plants a little bit more. And so there's things like vermicomposting. So sometimes these are where you want worm casting. So you want essentially their byproducts after they're eating. They make worm castings, and so this is really, really healthy for your plants. It's wonderful. It's a great gentle fertilizer, and they're so rich in nutrients. It's compost essentially. Really, really great. And sometimes some people want to raise them themselves, so they don't want to just go and buy the worm castings. They want to just have their own. So there is a whole thing called vermicomposting, in which you have a bin and you have different types of worms in there. You can get red worms, red wigglers are really common in the hobby, and you just feed it your scraps, all of your compost, and it feeds on that, and then it produces worm castings, and then you're able to then collect that and use that in your plants. So yeah, it's wonderful not only for its nutrients, but it also kind of sequesters a lot more moisture as well. So if you use a lot, it doesn't mess with your pH. And yeah, you can the worm casting separately if you're like, yeah, I'm not gonna farm worms. But if you do want to do it yourself, you can purchase them as adults and just set it up. It's a pretty cool thing. And then trigger warning, roaches are next. Bladder composting. So there is also a method of composting using roaches. So using different types of species. It's not just these two species, but these tend to be more readily available in pet stores, which is the Blaptica dubia roaches or the Madagascar hissing cockroaches. Very, very common roaches that people use as feeders for like lizards and things like that. But their frass, so their byproduct, is incredibly nutritious to plants. And so they compost much faster than earthworms. And you can purchase them kind of ready to go. And you also create a bin. The Blaptica dubia roaches can't climb. So those are just easier in terms of preventing escapees. The Madagascar hissing cockroach, they can climb, but they really won't become a pest. They can't survive in kind of like, our temperatures. They need a lot of humidity and they eat mostly like breaking down food. So they're not like a pest species, but if they would get out, you might see them, and so you would have to catch them again. So that might, if you're like, I don't want to contend with that, the Blaptica dubias might be a good one, especially if you have lizards and things that they already that you would be able to feed them off to. But if you're like, hell no, I would not want to do that. I would rather just again get the finished product. You can't just buy the finished product. And so it's called insect grass. And so you can go ahead and just purchase that to add to your plants. And it's again, great nutrient, great gentle way to provide your plants with nutrition and works as a fertilizer. But it doesn't have like urea or these types of components that can end up burning your plants, because there are certain fertilizers that can end up actually harming your plants in the long run. So these are alternative ways of feeding these nutrients to your plants that come with a much less percentage of causing damage. And so I always recommend that. And again, it's just a way of working with other creatures in the environment. So you're creating that ecosystem, because a lot of the creatures that might already be in your mixes, like any microbes, small microorganisms, bacteria, archaea that are living in your plant's mix, will also feed off of the frass and the worm castings and things like that, and just helps your plant kind of stay in this healthier state. But yeah, so that was that. I hope that was helpful. Wanted to kind of introduce you to a couple baddies and a couple of friends so that you knew how to tell the difference. I get a lot. I'm a houseplant consultant, for those of you who don't know. And so I do get a lot of consults booked with people who sometimes see things that they're not sure what to make of it, right? They just see it and it's moving. They need somebody to help them identify it. So I thought, I've had a lot of recent messages like that, and I think it's because, of course, it's warming up, so it's that time of year, and I wanted to introduce you to a couple of these so that you can see for yourself and identify them for yourself. And so for those of you who don't know, there is a Google sheet if anybody would be interested in doing swaps. So you can put where you are located, what you have to offer, and the best contact method. So you can just put like a zip code or your state so that then you can connect further with someone in a private setting, like in your personal DMs. So you don't have to put your address in there or anything like that. But it's just a fun way to say, hey, I have this available, and see if any of you would like to make those connections and share, spread the plants around. So feel free to take a screenshot and use that QR code to connect with others. Also, I offer these classes for free. These it's originally started as making a home for houseplants, but these are urban garden learning series classes are free here for my houseplants. And yeah, but hey, if you want to help me get my coffees in the morning, tips are always appreciated, but I am keeping this free. So yeah, just help, if you want to support the channel, definitely. But no pressure, no worries. It's just always appreciated. The Patreon also is live. And so if anybody, I'm going to be doing a lot more with Patreon. So if that's something that interests you, yeah, let me know. There is also an Amazon shopping list. These are non-affiliate links, so I'm not getting anything from these. These are just items that I have personally purchased and I like. And then there are a few items that folks have told me that they tried that they really like that are in there. So these are tried and true items. And so, yeah, and I always check to also see if somebody's recommending something, see if I've tried it or something similar before posting it onto the shopping list. So check that out in case you might see something that I'm using. You're like, wait, where'd you get that? It's usually Amazon. So yeah, I try to kind of keep it on that list so that folks can see like things like my grow lights or the macrame hangers or things like that, or even the types of pots. So that's all in there. And yeah, and if you want to reach out, it's info@urbangarden.eco. That's my same Instagram handle and the website. So it's all urbangarden.eco. So that's where you can find me. The website is currently undergoing a bunch of revisions and additions, and it's going to be very cool. I'm adding a bunch of classes on there. I'm going to be scheduling out a bunch of workshops as well. If you're here in New York City, I'm also scheduling a bunch of walks. I am partnering with different organizations to be offering a lot of things like lecture series as well, including I'm going to be hopefully doing one in the late summer with WNYC here. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. So yeah, so definitely reach out if you have any questions. And yeah, I hope that you enjoy the rest of your Monday, and yeah, that you'll hop on next week. And yeah, thanks so much, everyone. And oh, I'm seeing here, are you attending the event on the 17th? I was not aware of an event. Um, oh, that's wonderful. That is very cool. Oh, wow. I would love to. So yeah, sure. I'll make sure I sign up. Let me see to RSVP. So yeah, let me email and see if I can get on the list. Um,
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you
just
so
curious.
much.
Have you taken this? Have you attended this event before?
Not this specific event. I've
Okay.
attended the similar events for the Queens Botanical Garden, where they do these types of events that are geared for folks that are interested in horticulture. And so they either plant things or you weed. Um, so I have attended those. With NYBG, I have a partnership with them. I'm one of their cultivators, but I have not attended this specific like event before. So I'm gonna
Okay.
sign up because that looks
Yes,
like that's a lot of fun.
and it looks like it's an annual event, and they got sponsors, sponsorships, and look into the speaker lineup. I personally think it's really good.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for letting me know. Because I'm definitely I'm gonna email and see if I can get on the list because that would be great. Thank you. Seriously, thank you for sharing. Yeah, any events, any of you, if you ever have any recommendations for events that are local, I'm also trying to make sure I got a gimbal thing for my camera. So what I'm hoping is to also go to certain events here that are being offered where I'm able to record. And so then I can also record it for folks that can't make it so that you can see things like certain museum exhibits, um, certain like botanical tours and things like that. And I'm gonna start recording walking tours as well through different parks and things in different green spaces to introduce folks to different types of plants and some of the work that I'm doing here in the city. So like weeding and things like that. So there's a lot of cool content coming. And yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. And again, enjoy the rest of your Monday, enjoy the rest of your week. And yeah, I hope I'll see you next week. Have a great one, everyone. Bye for now.